All right, we left off talking about. Ooh, very loud there. Hang on. We left off talking about variables, how to get variables, and we really said here's some names we want to use. We also need to think about how do I get input. And so input is a pretty easy thing to do in Python. It's kind of a really nice thing. So I'm going to open up idle again. So pop it up on the screen, slowly but surely. And I'm going to go File, New, so I have it in. And so input, really, we're going to start generally with our template. And so I said, well, I've got my template hiding at, so I'm going to File, Open, and I put it in Documents. So that Documents, and then I have a Python, and I say, here's my template. That's the one I want to open. So that template file, and I left some pieces in here where it says hi, input, and I need to take those out. So my template should just really be my comments and then that inline. And we use that blank input just to hold our program open. So we kind of created that input function. We said, all right, here we're going to get a value. We're going to get a value in this case called name. We can put it back out. So we can combine those things we're looking at. But we want to go a little past that, and we want to see if we can manipulate strings of text that we've now stored as variables. So we took in something called a name. Can we output that name, and can we manipulate it around a little bit? And so one of the things we can do is we can edit some of those pieces, and we can change how they look and how they work. So one of the examples out of our book is something called the string quotation manipulation. And so they took a quote, and so we're just going to quickly say, okay, quote equals the basketball game last night was exciting to the end. So we took a basic piece of text and we said, all right, so we want to manipulate this and change it around a little bit. What kind of things can I do in? And so I could do print statements, and I could do a print statement and I could say, I want to print out my original quote. Well, I do that, and that should, I'm going to save this one as quote. So that should print out my quote, and it does. Well, we wanted to do something a little more exciting. And so maybe I can manipulate this so that we can do all of that quote in lowercase. So quote or print. And now we're going to have to manipulate it a little bit. So we're going to say quote. And we use this dotted notation. And we do that a lot. And that says, this is my item or my variable, but I'm going to manipulate it. I'm going to use upper. And notice what happens when I do that. When I put that dot and I start typing, notice it gives me a whole lot of things that I can do. And I'm going to try upper to start with and see if that works. And because we're passing it into another function, this is where it looks a little weird. Because we're passing it into another function, I actually need to put two quotes in there. So it's passing it into a function internally. And so now if I run it and I save it, notice it says, there's on my normal quote, there it put it all uppercase. Oh. So if I can do it with an uppercase, I bet I can do something similar with it as a lowercase. And so I'm just going to cut and paste it in. And I'm going to type, instead of upper, I'm going to type lower and see if that works. And notice that takes out any capitals and makes the entire string lowercase. Well, we can even do a couple of other things. So if I wanted to manipulate this and I wanted to change something in there, so upper and lower, and there's a whole list of other ones we can do. So if you're looking on page 37, you'll see that there's one called a title. So to return it where it's formatted as a title, that one's pretty easy to do. But the replacement piece is kind of interesting to do. So I can, inside a print statement, print my quote, and I can use the key phrase replace. And notice replace is going to then, inside of the function we pass it to called replace, we're going to put in the first step. So we're going to replace basketball, and I'm going to replace it with the game with the large orange ball. And so now, what it should print out, it didn't actually change that quote, and we can look at it, but it's going to print out, it's going to take basketball out and should replace it with, and notice what it does. It took out basketball, and notice I have a really bad spelling error there, the game with the large orange ball. But if I actually do this quote again, so I just do print, it's still there in its original form. It didn't actually change it, but it did on the print statement. So we can change text and other print items even just as we're printing them. So that's kind of a neat tool that we'll use when you start creating games and other things in here. And so table 2.3 on page 38 does not describe all of the different ways, but you can certainly see a few of them. So upper, lower, and then there's one called swap case, which is kind of interesting. Capitalizer, you can see title, strip, so you can actually remove white space and just shove everything together, and then replace. Well, so now we're getting a couple more things. We can get an input, and we had that input, and we said, all right, it comes in, and we see that it's a string when it comes in. Well, we have some other ones we're going to look at, and we need to think about what those data types are. And so we know we have strings, and we know we have integers, and we know we have a floating point or a decimal type number. So Python, for good and bad, really lets us have all different kinds of pieces together, but it doesn't always make our lives any easier by it doing it for us. And I'll show you an example of that here. So I'm going to look at a few of these pieces here, and I'm going to look at a program called Trust Fund Bad, or Trust Fund Buddy Bad. And so it's in your book, and I'm going to just grab the copy of it, and I will show it to you. We'll look at it real quick. So instead of me having to type the whole thing, I've got this program right now that you can look at. And so it has a couple of pieces. So it says, your trust fund. Well, don't use it all up or you'll have to get a real job. And so we have a couple of items. So you know if you're in a trust fund, you have to have a car. And so what we're trying to get is you to input how much your Lamborghini tune-up's going to run. We have rent. Well, a Manhattan apartment's probably a little more expensive than Peru. We have your private jet rental, gifts, foods, games. Oh, and you need a personal guru and a coach, maybe some computer games. And so then we take that and we say total equals, and we add up all those individual items. So that should say, really quickly, how much it costs to spend every month. So I'm going to run this program. And so because I've had a Lamborghini, or not, I'm going to say, what do you think a Lamborghini tune-up's going to run? 12,000 maybe, 13? They're not cheap. I found a local mechanic who's even cheaper though. He's going to do it for 10 grand. My Manhattan apartment. Has anybody priced apartments in Manhattan? No. Well, let's just say you're probably 20 grand a month for a really nice swanky apartment. Your private jet rental, let's say that's 25,000 a month. Gifts, well, you know, you can have friends if you give away a lot of gifts. So we're going to put 22,500 for that month. Dining out. Well, if you're in Manhattan, you're rich, you might spend 5 grand a month easy. Staff, well, 3,250 or 32,500. Personal guru every month, that's probably 10,000. Computer games, well, you're kind of cheap this month. You only spent $250. So I'm going to put all these in, and it's going to total up what my monthly spending is. Whoa, wait a minute. I spent a lot of money, but what happened? What went wrong with this program? It did. Input takes everything as a string, and we already saw that we could use that plus symbol to combine strings, so it just put everything together. And I know some people that spend a lot, but they don't spend that much in a month. So we have to come up with a couple of other ideas in here and how we can convert those values from one to another. So this program works. There's not a problem with the program. It does exactly what we told it to do. The problem is we didn't tell it to do necessarily the right thing. And so somehow we need to convert all of these items into either integers or decimals. So we can do that in a couple of different ways. So the first way I could do that is I could come down here in the next line, and I can actually do something where I convert. So I'm going to say now car equals the integer of car. So I have taken car, that's a string, and I'm converting it to an integer. So car is now equal to an integer. All right, so now I can run that program, and now it's going to have a different issue. So I'm going to just put ones in for everything just so I can quickly type them in. And it's going to crash. And the reason it crashes, I have integers and I'm trying to add them to strings. And it's going to tell me that. So I need to make sure all my values get converted. Well, this works, and I could put that line in for every one of them. So I could say, all right, well, and I know rent is equal to the integer of rent. But there might be a little easier way. And a lot of times we can wrap a function inside of another function. And so what we could also do is we could directly put in integer. So we're putting the value of this input function into the function integer to convert it. And we can do that on each one of these really quickly. You do have to remember to make sure you have the right number of closing parentheses. But now we're just converting what we started with into integers. And we can convert them into other data types if we needed to. And we can convert from integers back to strings if we need to also. So I'm going to go through and change every one of those. And so now, if I type that correctly, now if I put these in there, now it actually totals them up because we converted them to integers. And it worked really well. It said, all right, now I know what you're doing. Now you have numbers. I can add up numbers. And we can do that really easily. So we have to be careful that, remember, every time we get an input, it comes in as a string. And so at the bottom of page 43 is a conversion chart. Now that's not all the conversions we can do, but we can convert to an integer, to a float, which is our decimal, or we can convert to a string back and forth. So we can do that from about anything. So a lot of times I write these, and I write things like, so I would write games equals games plus 1 if I wanted to add $1 to it for a service charge. Well, on page 44 they talk about using augmented assignment operators, and so that way we could actually shortcut this just a little bit. So that is the same as saying game plus equals 1. And those are equivalent expressions. I prefer... Did I type it wrong? Oh, did I? Oh, that's not a big deal. So games equal... So just out of habit, I tend to type out the whole string. Game equal game, or games equals games, whatever it is, plus 1. Whereas you can shortcut it a little bit, and Python lets you do that. So page 44 looks at that and says, all right, we can do that. So the last piece we're going to do is we want to create a useless trivia game and kind of set us up for our homework assignment. So I'm going to start over with a brand new program. I'm going to close this out. Nope, don't care about making changes. And my shell I'm going to hang over here. And so because I have it up here somewhere, I'm going to use my template. And I'm actually going to file save as this one. So file save as useless trivia. Well, hi, what is your name? All right. Well, instead of saying, let's welcome you to the Peru, maybe we want to get some other information out of a user. And so what I might also want to do is I might want to get their age. And so age we could do as an input. Now tell me how old you are. And I can get a value then for age. And then I'm going to put one in. I'm going to put weight in. And I'm going to say, all right, input, step on the scale, and type in the result. So now I've gotten several pieces. I've gotten an age, I've gotten a weight, and so we can look at it and we can actually start to manipulate then these items. But we know that we may want to do something a little different, and one of the things we probably want to do, name we want to leave as a string. It wouldn't make any sense to convert your name to a decimal or a integer number. But age we probably do want as an integer, and so I'm going to say int at the beginning, and I'm going to put a second quotation mark, so I am passing that directly into the integer function, and I am doing that. And I'm going to do the same with the weight. So I'm going to say integer, and I'm going to convert those values into integers. This way I can do some manipulation with them. So we know we can do some things where we print upper and lower case. So I could print a name. So I could print your name in upper. I could print your name in lower. I could do all different kinds of things like that. Well, and that's interesting. And so on page 45, they show a couple of examples of that, where they're printing your name as upper and lower case. We could even print your name multiple times. So in this case, we're going to run a new variable, and we're going to call it called. Nothing exciting, we just use a name. And we're going to set that equal to the name times 5. Well, now, if I print called, we manipulated that string. We changed this one. We took name times 5 and made it a value called called. And so let's run this and see where we're at. So what is my name? Alf. Alf is 867 years old. And he weighs 10 pounds. And so now, notice what it did. It printed that name repeatedly. So it's like a small child yelling at you over and over and over again. So we can manipulate that text pretty easily. If I want to find out a few things, so I want to find out on your age, I want to know how many seconds you are old. Now, we're just taking it, the whatever age, we're not getting to the exact day, and we could at some point. But right now, we're just going to say seconds, because we want to figure out how many seconds you've been around, and we can take age times, if I remember how many seconds there are in a year, which probably we don't, we could do that. But we know that there's 60 seconds in a minute, and there's 60 minutes in an hour, and there's 24 hours in a day, and there's 365 days in a year unless it's leap year. And so now, so I combined it into a print statement. And so, how old are you? 867 years. And he's 10 pounds. And now it says, all right, so you are 2 million, whatever it is, number of seconds old. So we can manipulate, we can add it right in there. We manipulated a new string there. We can also do some other things. So now we could take that weight. Now, the weight we're going to have an interesting question about. So the weight, in the book it says, all right, you're going to take the weight and you're going to call it moon weight or sun weight or something. So we need to calculate what moon weight would be. So moon weight is going to be equal to weight divided by 6. You only weigh about 1/6 as much on the moon due to gravity difference. All right, so now I need to print your weight on the moon would be and I put in the variable that I just created. And so now, let's see what happens. So, hi, what's your name? Alf. I'm 867 years old. I'm 10 pounds. And now it looks at me and says, oh, well, you're this many seconds old, and your weight on the moon would be 1.66666666667. All right, so that's interesting because we gave it a weight and we assigned it as an integer. We divided it by an integer, but what we got was a result that has a decimal in it. And we learned a couple of pages ago we could manipulate what that output is. So now we could look at it, we could say, all right, now we need to change this variable, and maybe we only want, in this case, we wanted the integer result, because we don't need that long a string. So I'm going to go back up to my code, and so where it says moon weight, I'm going to actually replace that with, from page 29, that useful mathematical operators, I'm going to replace it with a double division sign. And so now when I run it, click OK, yep. My name's still Alf. I'm still 860 years old, still weigh 10 pounds. And so now it says your weight on the moon would be about 1 pound. It's not as accurate, but it also doesn't confuse your user with this whole long string. And since we haven't quite got to the point of knowing how we can truncate those off, that gives us a way we could do it from the information in here. So we also maybe want to do one with multiplication if you want to. And you could certainly do then sun weight is equal to weight times, I think it's 27.1. And then you could print your weight on the sun would be, and then sun weight. And we could run that. And I did something weird. Oh, forgot to end it. Again, my name is Alf. 867. 10. All right. So now, what did I do? I have an error. My program ran until I got here, and it says, uh-oh, there's some kind of a syntax error. And you are going to run into those. This is a great learning piece. And so I said, your weight on the sun would be sun weight. Well, if I look at that, I have a second W in there. And so it's going to hiccup on me. So I need to fix that in some way so it's actually the same number. I am really fond of using our friend cut and paste on your variables. That way you have them right. Run module. 867. And so on the moon, I'm going to weigh 1 pound, and on the sun, I weigh 275 pounds. And so you've just created a really quick program that you can create some pieces like that. So our assignment this week, so you have 2 pieces. So you have a discussion board, and then you have an assignment. And it says, well, we need to work to design a program to display the cost of a car for a car salesman. You should have the user enter the make and model of the vehicle and the base price. Okay. Well, I think we have all the tools to do that already. So the user is going to input a make and a model and the vehicle and a base price. Then it's going to add on other items such as undercoating, filing fees, and other items. So if you have bought a car recently it is a pain. Your original price jumps up significantly because there's all kinds of fees and additional pieces in there. So we're going to write a program to deal with that. And so since I have my template file here handy, I'm just going to delete all these other pieces out back to my original template file. So I'm going to add another comment line, and so I'm going to say assignment for week 8. And we can put in as many comments as you want. It's really a great idea. And so when I'm going to look at this, I'm going to look at a couple of things. So we know that we're going to have an input for make. I know I'm going to have an input for model, input for price. And so I can use those comments to kind of start thinking about how that's going to go. So we're going to get make, model, and a base price. So I'm going to make a note down here, items to add to cost. So what kind of things do we have in a car that we might have as an additional cost? So maybe they charge more for airbags. It's possible. What else will they charge you for? Heated seats. So when I buy that car, they may also say, you know what? If you get your windows etched with that VIN number for a low cost of $800 or something, so they might have VIN etching. They might want to sell you a warranty. What was that? Backup camera. Those are actually really nice. So we can put in all those items we know that we're going to have in there. So I'm going to come back up here, and I'm going to see if we can figure out the input for the make. So maybe we'll just call it make. That seems like a good variable. And we're going to make that equal to the input. And we're going to say, please enter the make of the vehicle you are buying. And so now, it's going to take this text string, pass it back to input, and wait for you to put something in. All right, that works. And now we can do something similar for the model. So we can just say model equals input. Please enter the model of the car you are buying. So now we get that, and then we need to do an input for price. And so we could say base price equals input. Please input the base price of the car you are buying. So we have all the items we need, I think. So we might then create up here at the top all these items we looked at. So we might say airbags equal, what do you say, $500? And then we might have one for heated seats. Equal, oh, let's call that $1,000. We're going to say VIN etch equals 1200. Warranty. So we're setting up all these values. 2500. So whatever items you think that the car dealer would mark up. And so now we can come up with a price. So total price is going to be equal to all of those items together. So it's going to be that base price plus airbags plus heated seats plus VIN etch plus warranty. So all of the items, we don't have sales tax in there yet either, do we? So all of those items we're going to add in, and then we're going to output, maybe on a print statement even to start with, the total price of your car is, and then we could make it really fancy. We could say, here's your base price, here's the price of all your options. So total price. So I would probably add a lot to that. I'm just going to quickly go through and see if that works. So we get an input, we output a value. This is probably a pretty simple program. So I'm going to hit F5 so I can save it. And it says, all right, what am I buying? So I'm going to buy a Ford Focus. And I'm not sure what a Ford Focus costs, but let's put $16,000 in. And uh-oh, I get an error. And so these errors try to tell me what's going on. And it says in line 27, I have an error. So must be string, not integer. Must be string, not integer. So I'm going to go back up and look. Why is it saying I have strings and integers trying to mix them up? My price, I put numbers in here, 500, 1,000, 1,200, 25,000. Really expensive warranty. Where am I not getting a number, an integer? So we have to figure out where we're not getting an integer. So I know these are, I think, I better double check my look. But the other piece I add in is base price. So I come up here, base price is an input. Oh, I didn't convert that to an integer. So since I've already got that line done, I'm going to say base price equals an integer function of base price. So now I can try to run that and see what I get. So again, I'm going to go through Ford F-150, and it's $52,000. Oh, crap. I have another error. So I get that error, and I have to go up and I look at it, and I say, well, all right. It says line 25, we're having an error. So I need to figure out where line 25 is. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. So I can count down and I can find where it's at. But I'm pretty sure it's probably in this line here, which would happen to be line 25. And so I need to look at that and see what I can see is different. So, all right. So total price, that one's right. Base price, well, that seems to be right. And what it says is the VIN etch is not defined. Well, wait, I have a VIN etch here. And I have a VIN etch here. What's the difference in them? Yeah, it does make a difference if they're capitalized or not. So I change VinEtch so they match. And so now I'm buying a Chevy some kind of pickup. And that pickup is only $47,000. So total price $74,700. Well, if you've bought a new car, that seems about right. You start out at $40,000 and end up in the $70,000 range. So it's not very neat. It needs a lot of work. Our program works, but does it tell me all the different items on there and make it a really neat way to do it? No. So you could use things like those tabs that we learned about. So you could put in an output. You could say print thank you for buying a, and then you could use those tab functions to tab over maybe 3, and we'll get all on the same place. And then we have make. So you could make this a really pretty output. So I'm going to do this really quickly. So notice here now it says, thank you for buying a, uh-oh, why did it print out those T's? Oh yeah. So I got the wrong slash in there. And that's one of the common things people do, is they use the forward instead of the backslash. So the key here is we're willing to try, we work at it, we make changes. And so now that could look really neat. You could have a couple blank lines and say, thank you for buying a blank. And if I did the same number of tabs, I could do that with all of my items across there. And I could say your total price is blank. Your options are blank. And you could list out a really nice output for your input. But getting the logic to function to begin with is kind of important. Now, we don't yet have any ability to say, I want only items X and Y, but I can certainly create this program to run through one time and to get my information. So, a couple of things this program has to have. Has to have your name in it. I download them in bulk. If it doesn't have a name, it doesn't get a grade. It needs to have the assignment on it. And it should produce a really nice output for that input. So this is functional, so this would be C-level work. B and A work would be then including, so it functioned and formatted that output really, really nicely. So in this case, we have airbags, heated seats, VinEtch, and a warranty. And so then you could come in and you could really nicely output this. So you could format this to be really, really effective. So print for buying a, and then you could put in the model. So we have enough items already in your reading and in your working with this. You can format and make these a really nice appearance. So hopefully I've covered all the big issues you're going to run into. So what you're going to turn in this week, so when I click in and I do the homework here, so when I say, all right, I want to click on that, what I'm going to turn in is that .py file. So I'm going to come down here and I'm going to browse and I'm going to find it. So you need to be able to find these files and reuse them. Don't forget there is also a discussion board this week. So week 8's discussion board. So I have already several people posting on there. So what other languages? Why would I have chosen something different? Are there better options? And I'm willing to state there might be. We just picked one arbitrarily to kind of get your feet wet in this coding world. So that's the assignment, and that hopefully is enough information to get everybody started on that.